Hello, this is Tony Brewer from the We Talk Truth Group, and you're listening to Cogitations. This is episode number 55, and in this episode, we're going to talk about being offended. Daniel said, "Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me, and my countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart." Well, we're not going to keep the matter in our heart. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to talk about being offended because I've been watching episodes of that 70s show, and I'm very, very surprised at the time in which these episodes were filmed, that they were, and it wasn't that long ago, they were so heavily focused on family values, having a mother and a father, and being normal, and I don't know, it was very interesting. I find myself really relating to Red Foreman. He's kind of gruff. He's no nonsense. He has very strict morals, a very strict code of conduct. And this episode that I watched, I remember that two of the friends were angry at one another. It was some foolish little squabble. It was some foolish little squabble, and they, hold on just a second. All right, so let's get back. It was some foolish little squabble, and so Red moved the couch and said, "Okay, y'all are going to spend about 3 hours bare-knuckle fighting, bare-knuckle boxing." And they were like, "What? No, we're not going to bare-knuckle box." That Red said, "Well, if you're not offended enough to bare-knuckle brawl, then you're just not offended, so you need to shut up and let it go." And I'm like, that's amazing. That's such a good way of looking at something. And then that got me to thinking about being people who are offended. I mean, we live in an offended culture. Our social currency is how bad we're offended. It seems like, and it's a virtue to be offended. If I'm offended, I'm virtuous, and I can virtue signal by getting online and talking about how offended I am at this group or that group or this action and this action, and I can do that and not really affect any real change. You see, excuse me, there's a cost for being offended. If you're really offended, you're going to take action. And I want to go to the Bible. I want to go to this scripture, Matthew chapter 18. Look at verse 15. "Moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault between thee and him alone. If he shall hear thee, thou hast gained my brother." Look, a confrontation is an awkward thing. Nobody likes a confrontation. I'm a very confrontational individual, and I don't like confrontation. Some people think I like confrontation. I don't like confrontation. I'm going to try my best to forbear and just let something go. I'm going to take there's two different approaches. There's two different approaches to church discipline, and one is the frozen approach, which is you build a snowman and let it go. And the other is the Barney Fife approach, and you nip it in the bud. It takes both of these things. If you're really, really, really offended and somebody has really trespassed against you and they have caused offense, you've got to take the Barney Fife approach. You've got to nip it in the bud. But if you're offended at something somebody does, yet you're not willing to run the risk of a confrontation, then you got to build a snowman and let it go. Don't fester. I like this. Don't save it up for when you see that person again, and then 2 or 3 years later, you see them out somewhere, or you might see them as a preacher. You might see them at a lectureship or something, and you pull them to the side and says, "Hey, I've just been waiting till I've seen you again," and then you unload on them. That's sinful. That's gunny sacking. That's not forbearing. That's building up. That's holding a grudge. It is so easy to have a conversation with somebody in today's time, and all you got to do is make a phone call. All you got to do is send a private message on Facebook. I've sent private messages to people on Facebook and said, "Hey, could you please give me a call?" And we've talked. I had a fella that a fella made a comment on a post that I made about three or 4 years ago, and I offered a rebuttal, and he got mad, and he said, "Well, listen, you call me like a man," and gave me his phone number. And I don't know if he expected me to call him or not, but I called him. And we had a good conversation. Turned out everything was all right. But this foolishness of just being offended and not taking care of it, if you're not offended enough to take action, if you're not offended enough to deal with the awkwardness of a confrontation, then you're just not offended. And that's what Jesus was trying to get across to us in his work, in his book, in his words, book, whatever. I got my English words all tried to come out at once and they got jumbled. Anyway, that's what Jesus was trying to get across to us in his words and in his work, incidentally. If your brother trespasses against you, you go and tell it to him and him alone. That's difficult to do. And for one, let me tell you, before the advent of modern technology, you had to go to your brother face to face. And you run the risk of having violence done to you. I mean, there was a risk in confrontation, a real risk. I mean, if your brother trespasses against you and you have to go talk to him, he might get so mad that he becomes violent. Well, now you have that protection. You don't have to suffer the face-to-face interaction. You can call him on the telephone. At the very least, you can send a text. But what that means is we have to temper our responses, because now there's basically no cost of being offended. Being offended and taking action doesn't cost you anything, because what most people do is they hide behind a computer, they hide behind a telephone, they're offended with people that are 100 or more miles away in many cases that they're not going to see, and that doesn't cost them anything, and they can still feel virtuous because they're offended. Oh, that person, I had a fella call me, I think he was from like Southern California or something, and he called the church building. He called this telephone at the church building and wanted to talk to me and wanted to know what I taught on marriage, divorce, and remarriage, and what I taught on this and another. Wait a second. You're 1,000 miles away. And listen, now I was nice to him, but it got to a point where I wasn't very nice. I asked him, I said, why are you asking me these questions? He said, well, I want to make sure that you're sound. I said, man, you're 1,000 miles away. What are you going to do if I ain't sound? I mean, you're everything that I put out. I mean, I've got thousands of hours of content online. I've got volumes of written work online. All you got to do is read it. You can tell whether or not I'm sound. You ain't got to call me up and ask me 20 questions. Do your due diligence. If I'm not sound, it'll bear out. So anyway, finally I just asked him, I said, do you believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God? Boy, he got mad, called me everything but an honest looking white boy. Let's go to the book of, where am I at here? 1 John chapter 4. 1 John, chapter 4. We'll get it here in a minute. Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits, whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. Hereby know ye the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesseth that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is of God. Actually, I remember now, I said, has Jesus Christ come in the flesh? Do you believe that Jesus is the Son of God and that was God in the flesh? So anyway, he got angry. And when I don't mean he just got a little angry, I mean this man got mad and said, you have no right to ask me that. I said, well, wait a second. I have every much of a right to ask you that as you have to ask me any other question about matters of doctrine. In fact, my question is literally straight from the words of the Bible. Well, that phone call didn't end very well, and he didn't like it, so he didn't get what he thought he wanted. Incidentally, for all of y'all here, good morning. There's 24 people in this live stream. I'm so thankful that you're here. Facebook has censored us and throttled us. Please share. Invite your friends. Go to www.podbean.cogitations or www.cogitations.podbean. Excuse me, and subscribe and make sure that you never miss an episode that I upload. Go to wetalktruth.com and subscribe, or subscribe on Apple Podcast. We want you to get this content. We want you to be able to listen to it in a manner that you see fit. And it's hard to pay attention to a video maybe while you're driving down the road or doing housework or working at a factory or something. But if you listen to the podcast channel, you can have that podcast going in your ear and you can multitask. And pardon me, I've got some kind of weird summer cold going on, but I'll live. Anyway, so back to this phone call. This guy, you see, if he would have been face to face with me, this confrontation probably wouldn't have gone anywhere near that way, because he would have tempered his speech, because there is something different about face to face confrontation. All right. We need to practice that more as Christians. Look, if you're 1,000 miles away, if you ain't in my backyard, I can't do much about you. So I'm just going to kind of leave you alone. I can't help it. And now don't get me wrong. If you're flat out teaching error, then I'm not going to avoid mentioning that fact, but I'm not going to make it my quest to call you out. I'm just going to make sure that I've familiarized myself with the error that you're teaching, and I've taught the truth on it, and then the truth will out. That will bear out. Now, I may post something in the We Talk Truth group, or I may ask a question in the We Talk Truth group to get a conversation started about the particular error that you're teaching. But as a general rule on Facebook, I'm not going to, let's say you've got a false teacher 1,000 miles away from Tony Brewer. I'm not going to, on my personal Facebook page, where people in Northeast Arkansas who are following me can see what somebody 1,000 miles away is teaching. There's no reason to do that. Why would you fight a fight that you don't have to fight? I wouldn't do that. It's just not profitable. Now that's not even talking about being offended. I might be offended at the way somebody does something. And if, take for instance, if Joe Blow 100 miles from me is doing something, let's say he's got a lectureship, then I don't think he's running his lectureship right. Well, you know what? So what? It's not in my backyard. It doesn't affect me. And I can't do anything about it. If he's teaching false doctrine, then I can mark him. I can publicly mark him, but that's about it. I can't control what the man does 100 miles away from me. I'm not going to get in my vehicle and drive, say, 100 miles. That'd be 100 minutes at 60 miles an hour. I'm not going to drive almost an hour in 45 minutes away just to tell this man he's not doing something that I think he should be doing, or he's doing something I think he should be doing when it comes to his personal involvement in his ministry. There's no way I'd do that. Facebook makes it so easy to be offended and so easy to have a confrontation, and people do it all the time. People are so confrontational on Facebook because it doesn't cost you anything. That's not what God designed. God designed you to have some skin in the game whenever you are so offended that you feel like you have to have a personal confrontation. God wanted to set it up to where, hey, if you're really offended, then you need to go to that person and that person alone. Here's something you don't get to do. You don't get to sit around and talk about the person that's offended you, because that's easy. That's really easy to do. I remember whenever I was young, man, I was like 19 years old, 20, something like that. I was working for this outfit, and we had ordered some sandwiches, and this fella ordered a club. And I heard one time that club stood for chicken and lettuce under bacon, CLUB. I don't think I agree with that. Maybe some of y'all could Google it and see if I'm right in my disagreement with that, but in my scrutiny of that, in my cynicism maybe. But anyway, so he ordered a club, and I don't think he got any bacon and lettuce. I think it was just chicken. And of course he went crazy, and he didn't eat, and he raised some Cain. And then the next thing you know, the next day, he told us at lunch, he said, I went down there to that restaurant. He said, they called the cops. He said, they called the cops on me. And we're like, why'd they call the cops on you? Well, he made a scene. He said he threw the sandwich and stuff like that. Let me tell you what he did. I guarantee, because this guy, you got to understand his moral character. Probably what happened is he went home, and he got to thinking about that, and he was offended, and he got to thinking about it. Then he got to drinking about it, and then it worked itself up, and he started building this up, and he started resenting this guy that sold him this sandwich that was wrong. And instead of taking care of it in a normal manner, it blew all out of proportion because he really wasn't offended enough to have a personal confrontation in the moment. Because we told him, like, you can go down there and you can change your sandwich. What he did, he got to gossiping about it. He got to fuming about it. And then it built up and it exploded, and he threw the sandwich back in the man's face probably 2 or 3 hours after he went home from work and had been drinking about it. Personal confrontation, being offended. If you're not offended enough to withstand or endure the awkwardness of a confrontation, a physical confrontation, then you just ain't offended enough, and you need to let it go. You got me? That's just so simple. And I like Red Foreman from that 70s show. If you're not offended enough to bare knuckle fight, you're just not offended. Shut up and let it go. The world would be so much better if we adopted that stance. And anyway, yeah, there's a difference between irritations and offenses. We need to learn to let the former go and properly deal with the latter. That's, of course, he cites Matthew 18:15-17. I think that 1 Timothy 4:16 needs to be considered all the more. Okay, so I'm going to have to shoot some apple cider vinegar or something. This was kind of a nuisance yesterday, and it's getting pretty rough today. I think that 1 Timothy 4:16 needs to be considered all the more relative to our personal responsibility to ourselves and doctrine and those within. Catch it. He all caps this. Our community. That here all caps us. Of course, that emphasis is on the writer of this comment, and I'm with him. Take heed unto thyself and unto the doctrine, and continue in the doctrine, and you'll save yourself and those that hear thee. That's not the King James, that's the Tony paraphrase, but go read 1 Timothy 4:16. We cannot be effective in our community being busy in everyone else's community. I've got a friend who told me that he was talking to one of his buddies that went to the Memphis School of Preaching lectureships, that went out to eat lunch with some fellow preachers. And his buddy told him that all throughout that lunch, the only topic of conversation was other preachers and the work that they're doing and how they're not doing it well. Listen, the guy that I'm talking about, he said the exact same thing that I say all the time. I've got way more than I can handle in the, what is this, 870? Yeah, I've got way more than I can handle in the 870 area code. I forgot where I was. I've got way more than I can handle in Bay, Arkansas. I can't handle, well, So this is on a public venue. This is Robbie Everso that commented about 1 Timothy 4:16. Robbie Everso, he's going through preaching school. He's in East Tennessee or Carolina, or I can't remember that. It's the Tri-Cities preaching school, and I can never remember which city of the Tri-Cities he's in. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I can't busy myself with the work he is doing. You know, I mean, he's not doing anything that I disapprove of. But guess what? If he were doing some stuff I disapprove of, I can't worry about that. I've got to deal with Tony Brewer, and I've got to deal with Bay, Arkansas. I'm not equipped to deal with people 500 or 600 miles away. We need that. That's such a wise and good statement. We need to understand that. And like I said, if it may be. It may be, let's take Robbie Everso for instance. Let's say Robbie does do something that I find so personally offensive that I'm willing to risk a confrontation. At the very least that I should do is send him a message with my phone number and say, brother, could you call me? I need to talk to you about something important. And that sets the tone and the tenor. And when we talk, we'll both be coming to the table with an understanding that this is a grave conversation, that it ain't just I'm calling to chat. That's the very least we can do. And if it's important enough, I'm the kind of fella that I'll show up at your house. I don't care if you are 6 or 8 hours away. It's that important to me. And if I'm that offended by something that you've done, I will risk that confrontation. What I will not do, what I will never do, is make a comment, a snide comment, or an indictment on a Facebook post that you've put out. I just wouldn't do it. And don't get me wrong, I have done stuff like that in the past before I really sat down and thought about the ramifications of what I was doing. It's wrong. It violates, well, I tell you what it violates. Let's go to 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, listen to this. It violates the principle. Now, I understand what's going on in 1 Corinthians chapter 6 ain't Facebook, but it violates the principle here. Dare any of you, having a matter against another, go to law before the unjust and not before the saints? Do you not know that the saints shall judge the world, and that the world shall be judged by you, are you unworthy to judge the smallest matters? Know ye not that we shall judge angels? How much more things that pertain to this life? If then ye have judgments of things pertaining to this life, set them to judge who are least esteemed in the church. I speak to your shame. It is so that there is not, or is it so that there is not a wise man among you? No, not one that shall be able to judge between his brethren. But brother goeth the law against brother, and that before the unbelievers. Now, therefore there is utterly a fault among you, because you go to law one with another. Why do you not rather take the wrong? Why do you not rather suffer yourselves also to be defrauded? Now listen. Somebody may speak against me publicly on Facebook. I've let that go. I just suffer the wrong. I don't have to fight. I don't have to participate in every fight I receive an invitation to. I just suffer the wrong. I'm not going to do that. Now, I used to, several years ago when I first started doing this and I didn't understand the ramifications of what I was doing, I would roll up my sleeves in a public forum and go to town. That's one reason why we have the We Talk Truth group, is so we can talk back and forth, and we can, yes, God forbid, I know it's a terrible bad word, we can argue. Okay? We just have rules of engagement to keep things from getting out of hand. And it's a semi-private place in the We Talk Truth group. We do have public debates on the added page where people go back and forth. But again, we temper that with Christian virtues. One of the Christian virtues is temperance. But what I don't do is I never go to another Christian's Facebook page, or I never go to another Christian's profile, or I never allow myself to be baited into a fight by another Christian I just take the wrong. Okay, because I'm not going to bring reproach upon the church in that way. Again, it's if you defame me on Facebook and you slander me on Facebook, I'll just take the wrong. But if I'm willing to risk a confrontation over it, I'm the kind of fella that shows up at your house. Knock, knock, knock. Hello, my name is Tony. You've been talking about me on Facebook. So anyway, there's going to be a lot of people bust hell wide open. Elizabethton. I always thought it was Tennessee, but I don't know why I was thinking it wasn't. Anyway, Elizabeth, is that where the Tri-City School of Preaching is? Elizabethton, Tennessee? I really thought it was in like Carolina or something. But anyway, I've been wrong before. I do stuff all the time that shows that I'm not inspired. Good deal. Well, listen, I don't know. Of course, you can see that I'm not on my Mevo camera. I'm not streaming the We Talk Truth group. If you want to be a part of the We Talk Truth group, where you can discuss things and have confrontations and have conversations, and many of them are confrontational. You can go to Facebook, and in your search bar, type in We Talk Truth, and you can join in, and it's a really good group. We have good discussions in there. They are moderated, so just read the rules, and if you just act right and do right, there are people in there that hold a wide variety of views, and we don't kick somebody out just because they disagree with us. We will ban somebody, or we will silence somebody if they disagree with us, or if they even if they agree with us, we'll ban somebody if they violate the rules of the group as we see them, as we interpret them. I mean, it's our group, it's our house. We interpret the rules. We wrote the rules. The discretion of a man deferreth anger, and it is his glory to pass over a transgression. Dude, Proverbs 19:11. I remember that hopefully because of the famous firearm to which credit for winning World War II is given. A lot of people say that World War II was won because of the 1911, the Colt model government issue 1911. Proverbs 19:11, the discretion of a man deferreth anger, and it is his glory to pass over a transgression. That is, well, of course it's profound. I was going to say that is profound, but it's a proverb. Of course it's profound. Thank you for that. Robbie Everso says, yes, we are in the Elizabethton, Johnson City, and Kingsport area. That's where you get the Tri-Cities. Cool beans. All right. Okay, so I think I've just about run out of stuff to say. If you're not offended enough to undergo the awkwardness or to endure the awkwardness of a confrontation, you're just not offended enough, or you're just not offended. So build a snowman and let it go. When it comes to church discipline, when it comes to reconciling with a brother, there are two extremes: build a snowman and let it go, and the Barney Fife method, nip it in the bud. It takes both. It takes both. If I'm offended at my brother, I'm not going to let it build up. I'm not going to let it fester. I'm going to nip it in the bud. But I'm going to have to undergo or endure the awkwardness and the uncomfortableness of a confrontation. And I'm going to try my best to make sure that confrontation is face to face. And if I'm not willing to do that, then I'm just not offended. So I'm going to just let it go. I'm going to forget about it. So that's the end. That's it. That's our Cogitations, episode number 55, about being offended. I hope you find these pleasing. I hope you find them helpful. I pray they're pleasing to God. And Cogitations podcast on YouTube, you can find these videos archived. You can go to Podbean at cogitations.podbean.com and have access to the episodes. You can also go to Apple Podcast and search Cogitations. You can find them there. And if you want to support what we do, evidently we're going to have to buy a camera or something. I don't know, but we're looking at what am I doing here? What am I doing? camera. Patreon. There we go. www.patreon.com/near churches. So you can be a patron there, and I'm working on some stuff to get us some more exclusive content on the Patreon channel. As you said, many will bust hell wide open, and this because people don't think twice, defaming the bride of Christ, which Jesus died to purchase. Jesus takes it personally. You bet. He met Saul on the road to Damascus, and he said, "Why persecutest thou me?" When we defame the bride of Christ, when we defame the church of Christ, we defame Jesus. And as you said, he takes it personally. So that's all I've got here. God bless you. And thank you for tuning in. Subscribe, share this content, invite your friends to the We Talk Truth group. This is Tony Brewer from the We Talk Truth group. And this is live on the Added to the Church of Christ Acts 247 Facebook page. You can go there to catch these live. And we'll see you on the flip side.